Anyone else? Yeah.
Can you define like your idea of religion? Because like what I've kind of understood about it is that it's like a set of ideas. Like a religion is a set of ideas. But so how would you define a religion?
Religion can, like anything else in life, there is the literal approach to it, there is a metaphorical approach to it, there is a psychological approach to it, there is an intellectual approach to it, and there is a spiritual approach to it. Tonight we're going to talk about Judaism. And Judaism doesn't really have much spirit in it. It's kind of like Confucianism in the sense that it deems society very important. I mean, when you look at the last 6 commandments, it's all about your relationship with society, with your parents, with your neighbors, with money. The first 4, I think, are for very, very advanced people who are able to have a very monogamous relationship to God. We'll talk about that later. Now, when you come to Jesus, for example, and for the most part, it has to do with your temperament. Some people just enjoy going out with a man who is good looking and has lots of money. Some people are just repelled by all that. Some people want a man, but they don't really care how much money he has. They don't really care what kind of a car he drives. They want someone who thinks well. Some people say, no, I just don't want someone who thinks well. I want to make sure, like last night, that he comes from a good background. What's the use of being able to think well but drinking all the time? What's the usefulness of someone being able to talk all the time about wonderful things, but then when it comes to the practical application of these ideas, they're relatively incompetent? And so what you find in, for example, the ideas of Jesus is that he doesn't really care for the letter of the law. He doesn't care for what you read in the New Testament. Do you feel it? Are you inspired by it? Are you transformed by it? Are you going to love it and only it? Or are you going to love 2 masters? And you realize, well, some people have the capacity to attach themselves to the literal part. My capacity, I can only love your body. When I grow up a bit more, my capacity will be changed. I will love your mind. But until then, you gotta wait. Time passes, I will love your psychology, the history that lives inside you. When I become more mature, I will love your soul. But again, you have to wait. So when you ask about religion, it's the same thing. Different people at different stages of life are looking for different kinds of nourishments. That depends also on your culture, your background. If your parents, for example, are strict Catholics, they don't really much care about the spirit of the law. You just want to go to church every Sunday, read the book, all that stuff. There was a guy, I forget what century, Saint Francis of Assisi. He was born in a very, very rich family. He went to war, and he had a vision of sorts. And that's the thing, when you have an experience that whets your appetite, that something happens where some parts of you are transformed. You begin to see some things. It's kind of like the movie Pretty Woman. You've seen the movie? Well, have you seen the movie? Bad student. When you begin your profession as a prostitute, and I'm not talking from a lot of experience, I have some experience, but not a lot. Now, when you start your career as a prostitute, what happens is, let's say you come from a decent background, for some strange reason, you have a falling out with your parents, you move out thinking that you can make it on your own, you realize you can't, then you look at your life and you say, the only asset I have is my body. But then you can't sleep at night. Do I really want to do this? Do I want to sell my body for money to some men I despise? And then after a good amount of many number of sleepless nights, you say, well, I haven't had food for a while. I don't have a shelter. I have no friends. I can't go to my parents. I've been an outcast. What do I do? And so you go out there, you go to Target, you buy yourself a rope, you wear it, you stand somewhere and someone stops and says, how much? Say 50 cents? Okay. And it's going to be very troublesome, your first encounter. This is not something you've done. This is not something you were raised to do. And there is going to be this conflict about you. And then as time goes on, like all of us in this class, when you repeat something over and over and over again, you become callous, you become indifferent. It just becomes part of who and what you are. You're just angry, you just drink, you're just stupid. It just grows on you. And so what happens, by the time Richard Gere runs into this woman, you have a professional escort, very, very proficient in what she does. She's like a barista of sex, okay? She knows how to make love, not just have sex, make love. It's about making, it's like cooking. And when she runs into Richard Gere and she comes to realize that he's a little different than all the other customers, that he wants her to stay the night, he buys her food, they actually have conversations. And that is what religion is. Religion means going back. He, without really knowing, psychologically forces her to go back in time, retrieve her innocence. That despite being a professional escort, prostitute, she still has the capacity to love. And she does. Now that is transformation. And she can never go back to her old profession. There is this scene in the Gospel of Matthew where him and I think it's Peter standing by the shore. They're about to leave. And Matthew, the tax collector, looks at Peter and says, once we follow JC to Jerusalem, we can't go back to our families. Our life as we know it comes to an end. Are you okay with that? And that's the point. That transformation means your old life has ended. It's like you pushed a delete button. Now, it doesn't mean sometimes you won't slip. It doesn't mean sometimes you won't fall. What it does suggest is that your old life, which at one point had a great value, no longer contains that much value. You can walk away from it. Now, it is always to your advantage to hang out with people who are ordinary, who are casual, who are uninspiring, because then you can continue with your life. You can believe that, you are beautiful, that you should have a good amount of confidence about who and what you are. Go out there, do whatever because you are beautiful. As long as you believe that, then there is no examination, there is no reflection. Until, again, life punches you in the face. If, on the other hand, you hang out with people who demand the things from you, then your life can become troublesome, at least for a short period of time. I am reminded of Aldous Huxley. Huxley was like the Magnus Carlsen of philosophy to some extent. He had this photographic memory. He just knew so much. There came a point to his life, and he did a lot of drugs. But before doing drugs, he said, I know so much. It's like I have been with so many men, but I just don't feel anything about them. I have had so much sex, I just have no love in them. And that's what Huxley did. I read so much and I know so much, but I feel so little. And he tried so many things. And eventually he tried experimenting with LSD. Oh man, and he had visions. And he went around saying, there is no reason to sit and meditate every single day for 5 hours. There is no reason to go to church. There is no reason to be baptized by the Holy Ghost. You just be baptized by drugs. But then you realize that regardless of how high the drugs will take you, you'll eventually have to go back to your body. You'll eventually have to live in the world and function in the world. And if you have no understanding of life, if you have no understanding of advertisement, if you have no understanding of social forces, you don't stand the chance to live. It's impossible. Your life will be one big misery. Okay? So he came to realize, yes, drugs can be helpful, but they're profoundly dangerous. It's best not to do any drugs unless it's given to you by a very, very, very proficient teacher. Like if you live in a monastery. Okay? And so he went around and changed his ideas. And the point I was trying to make is he began to feel. Once he experimented with drugs, he saw what lives behind the ideas. It wasn't so much about the letter of the law anymore. He wanted to understand, why is it that someone like Plato keeps talking about Socrates? Why can't he be creative? Why can't he be autonomous? Why can't he just write Plato? What's wrong with him? Is he sick? Is he gay? What is it with him? And then once he was able to put himself in Plato's shoes, he understood, well, this is how you honor your teacher. This is how you love your teacher. You don't give yourself the permission to put your name down. What you are, who you are, is because of Socrates. And he waited and waited and waited. 20 years later, then he says, Plato wrote this. So when you ask about religion, the question is, well, there are all these different branches. Which branch are you ready for? Now, no one can be forced into anything. I can't force you to love me. And I can't force you to follow the spirit of a religion. If your capacity, if your temperament only allows for the letter. And there is nothing wrong with the letter. You don't need to feel love in your marriage. Just know that you're devoted and loyal to your wife and she is loyal to you. And you both work really hard to take care of your kids. That's enough. In a culture as crappy as this, where everybody is gung-ho about feeling and loving, nothing but crap awaits you, really. Anyone else? Allahu Akbar.
Where is your wife and kids on love?
It doesn't matter where they are. My job is to make some money, give my paycheck, pay my mortgage, give my kids some food, once in a while some spanking, and that's all. If they can remember me well when I'm dead, that'll be okay. Anyone else? Allahu Akbar.
Do you think that love is like the result of society, or is it part of human nature? Romantic love.
Say again.
Romantic love, not just loving your children.
Romantic love is a relatively new invention. It hasn't been around for too long. It's only in the past maybe 200 years, if you were to be somewhat generous, that people have been kind of encouraged into romance, love, feel intensely for your companion. And there are many reasons for it. First, when the Industrial Revolution took place around the 18th century and it prospered afterwards, women now had a social voice. You can go to school. You can become a CEO. You can become the president. In fact, you can have social power. And once you have social power, once you're able to make money, for example, imagine that you are my wife, okay? Now, you make about $10,000 a month. I make about like 9,000. Well, how much power do I really have over you? You can leave me at any time. Now we have to compromise. Now I have to make sacrifices. For the first time now, women have the power to stay in society, have their own voice, okay? Now, if for the longest time in human history, marriages were it was a barter system. I'm going to give you my daughter and you give me 5 cows. But life is tough. What can a woman do in a tough world? If you have a ground that's filled with rocks and gravel, well, how many hours can you actually take the axe or the shovel? 5 minutes? Maybe an hour? A man is a mule. Women are a burden. That's how it used to be for the longest time. In the Chinese culture, if you have a girl, you sit and cry. If you have a boy, good for you because you have a land. You have slaves. They can work for you. you know. And so now that the scenario has changed a little, what happens is woman says, no, I don't want to arrange marriage. I want to pick my own man. And so what happens is you fall in love. Now, it's something that has not been around too long, which means that we don't really have much experience in it. You know, and it's important to understand human nature a little bit, how your sensory organs work. That you are very, very instinctual in some ways. You work at a coffee shop, so you know there are some people who come and ask for coffee. You look at them and you just become attracted. You don't know them from Adam. But there is something about them that is very, very attractive. You gravitate towards them. That's who and what we are. We are blinded by our instincts. And if you're not careful, what happens? Well, you say, what's your number? What's your name? When are you off? Maybe we can have coffee. I'll make you coffee, not a pizza, at my place. And then what happens is when the two of you spend a good amount of time together, you have the explosion of emotions. Now, do you know this person? No. Do you know his past? No. Are you even worried? No, of course not. You're consumed by the emotions. Now, once in a while, you see things about this person that you don't like. Now, just because you see something, it doesn't mean that you have the will or the power to walk away, because the emotions have you. And then you will use your intellect to kind of remove the wrinkles. You know, you see him drinking too much, let's go to AA, let's go to church. He won't do it. And then you spend 2, 3, 4 years of your life. This is how it started. Remember, Pete's coffee, instinct. 4 years pass by. And then you say, well, maybe next time when I look at someone and I find my eyes saying, oh, what an attractive guy, I should ask some questions. And that's one of the difficulties of being us, human beings, that you only ask good questions after you have survived a good amount of pain, disappointment, suffering. Hi.
How do you distinguish infatuation from love?
Were you here the first day? I'm just kidding. What was your name? William. I had a student many years ago. About 24 years ago. His name was William. He was this young punk. Not you, of course. You're not young, and you're surely not a punk, but he was. He now teaches at the American River College, Philosophy and Humanities. I was teaching this class called Logic. In the middle of the class, he knocks, and he says, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, yeah, William, I'm like talking. And then he starts crying. Then I change his diaper, he's all fine. So the way I think, and I may be wrong, remember I'm only sharing with you my perspective. You don't need to like it, but since you need to pass this class, you have no choice but to be harassed by my ideas and my antics. So the way I think it works is that what happens is you find something attractive. Depending on how intense this component attraction is, it has the potential of just disappearing, fading, being forgotten, or it turns into a desire. If, for example, let's say you go to a shop and you find her attractive. Well, if you're in a rush and you have to go to work, you grab your coffee and you go. If on the other hand, you have some leisure time, you grab a table, but you make sure the table is directing this way so you can keep looking at her. The attraction turns into desire. She looks good. I like her hair. Look at those glasses. You know? And then You spend about 2-3 hours. You were there to read like the Bible, cover to cover, but you realize because of this thing called attraction, you've only read one word, in. In the beginning was God. You haven't gotten there, you're just in, because you keep looking at her. And every time you want to go further, she comes in and distracts you. And as you keep looking at her and fantasizing about her, the attraction turns into desire. Now, that depends on your temperament, where you say, if you're reserved, if you're shy, or if you're just a jackass, you say, well, should I go to her? Maybe she won't like me. Maybe I smell bad. Maybe I should shower first. Maybe I should go home and wear my 3-piece suit. At any event, so you begin to kind of desire her. And with the power of imagination, fantasy, dreams, hopes that all exist in the future, when this seed is nourished some more, you become interested. Now what you do, and remember, the more you spend time with her image in your head, the more history you're creating, the more involved you're getting without really knowing, the more difficult it is for you to simply walk away. So you do something really interesting. You say, well, it's only 9 o'clock. You go to her and you say, I'm sorry, what time do you guys close? And she says, well, 10 p.m. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to ask, what time are you done? You made such great coffee. I want to come back soon, and before you leave, have another cup. She says, I'm off at 3. Okay. You go home at 10, you shower, change, you go back to your place. Oh, hi. Interest. You get her number, you guys go somewhere like Starbucks and have coffee. I know, you work at Pete's and he takes you to Starbucks. It's blasphemous. But she pleads with you, let me go home, take a shower first. I smell like coffee. And you say, I love coffee. And you smell like coffee. And you have this poetic language to you that captivates her. And then you spend time, you go to Zachary's and have spinach mushroom pizza. She's never been there, so. Then you say, should I ask her to come to my place and have Starbucks coffee? They say, no, it's a little too quick for that. You drive her home. And she leans over to give you a kiss on the forehead to baptize you. And you say, no, I don't kiss on the first date. And she walks away saying, WHT, or is it WTH? Like, what the hell? And now you become somewhat mysterious to her. You call her in the morning, you spend some more time, and after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, all of a sudden you wake up and you're in the bathroom on the toilet bowl. And all of a sudden you begin to think about her. What? I'm supposed to be focused on my bowel movement, because I've gone to some yoga shops in Berkeley. They tell me live in the moment. But she has stolen the moment from you. And then you realize you're infatuated. With what exactly, we don't really know. But you have found in her beauty. And you don't really know what it is. For us, pathetic little human beings, ultimately beauty is reduced to touch. And its zenith ends in sex. That you and beauty become one and the same. And after you guys spend some more time, infatuation if nourished properly, it turns into obsession. You park your car, making sure that she walks alone to her car. She says, oh, I can't hang out tonight. I'm hanging out with my friends. Being a man, possessive, you drive to her place, park somewhere, then follow her, and you realize, oh yeah, she's just walking her dogs. And then after obsession, you find yourself in love. And then a year later, you realize it was a mistake. She leaves you. And then you do drugs. Hopefully not like that, but. Anyone else? You know, we're supposed to talk about Judaism tonight, but it can wait. Yeah.
Can you talk about why people are drawn to beauty and how each individual defines beauty?
I think if you were to kind of go back to the way our five senses work, I don't know why it is so. I don't know why sometimes I find myself attracted to some people. You know, it's something we talked about before. I had a student, and I remember this vividly because she was very attractive. And then, you know, sometimes you sit back and say, wow, you know, such beautiful nose, such beautiful cheekbones, such a beautiful jaw, eyes, hair. And then she raises her hand and says, can I ask a question? And her voice, oh my God. It was like the tires squeaking. It was high-pitched. It was like someone is putting a knife into your jugular. And all of a sudden, I realized that despite her face being attractive, her voice is so unattractive that I could no longer look at her face. But the point I'm trying to make, that's how we are made. I don't know why we find certain things attractive, and I don't know why we gravitate towards them. But that is a blessing as well as a curse. From the moment you are born, you gravitate towards things that give you pleasure. And pleasure is a thing of attractiveness. You want to be around pleasure as much as you can. You know? And the thing that pleasure and beauty do for you is that in the cradle of pleasure, let's just say that you love our conversation right now. 110%. It gives you pleasure. It beautifies your attention. You're not distracted. You're focused. You're giving me 110% of who and what you are. Well, in beauty and in pleasure, the past and the future disappear. I have you right now. You are monogamous. Nothing can distract you. And then what that does is it leaves a memory inside you somewhere. When the class ends and you're walking home, you're still in trance of sorts. Then slowly the impact wears off. You know, maybe you'll toss and turn. You'll wake up in the morning and all you have is a memory. And then you want to have a conversation that brings you back to life in the morning. But that conversation doesn't come about. And eventually the memory fades. You know, it goes somewhere in the cemetery of our consciousness. And then time passes and you forget. You may long for it for some time. It pains you. But we are lucky enough to be able to forget such moments that gives us wings, you know. And then time passes, you find yourself, let's say at a coffee shop, you find someone attractive, all of a sudden you say, the same feeling I had when I took this class has come back to me, but now in a different way. The container is different, but the content is very much the same. It's passion, it's pleasure, it's beauty. It captures you. And you can think of it in a very, very simple way. There were no Safeways. We had no rooms like this. Human beings are just dropped from somewhere or they just come out of the earth and they look around, they're naked. It's cold. Well, how do you freeze from your body? Well, being cold is painful, it's uncomfortable. You can't focus on anything. People around you die. So you begin to find cover. Leaves at first. Animal skin. And all of a sudden you have warmth. That's beautiful. We have found a way to overcome pain. It's like that. You will do whatever you can to get rid of pain, confusion, anger. We're in the business of beautifying our life. That's the sort of animals we are. Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Julian? William, my former student whose name was William now goes by Bill. When he was a bit younger, he had a girlfriend whose name was Anne. Now, the trouble with Bill and Anne in the Persian language is that Bill means shovel. Anne means poop. I kid you not. I mean, just close your eyes and visualize the relationship. Shovel and shit. Anyone else? Okay. We have about, it's only 7:30. Well, let's finish Judaism tonight because it's really not a religion. I'm just kidding for those of you who are of the tradition.
I have a question.
Yes,
When's the last day of class?
next week.
Next week? On Wednesday?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you talk about what it means to be truly weak
Weak?
as a human being?
I mean, there are degrees. And you're not initially weak whenever you have something that pushes you around. You'll try to kind of bring together your resources to combat it, to overcome it. So there are degrees of pain, there are stages of pain or weakness. Let's say, for example, that you and I are in a relationship, okay? And then I look at you and I say one day, I'm leaving you. Well, you're not just going to say, okay, bye. Unless, of course, you're very cold to me, I'm very cold to you. You've been cold to each other for the past many, many months, so parting ways is not going to be difficult. If, on the other hand, you still have strong feelings for me, when I say I'm leaving you, well, that's going to kind of bring a good amount of disturbances in your psychological and physical body. That makes you weak. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to say, can we talk? Well, that's one way you want to overcome it. I'm angry, I say, no, get lost. I go home. And what you do is you text me. You want to overcome the weakness, i.e. pain. I don't reply. You call me, I don't reply. You stalk me. And you go through all these hoops, ultimately, luckily for you and I, because we live in time and time has a tendency of making all of us forget. There comes a point, of course, when you become very, very weak. You want me, but I'm not going to come back to you. You find yourself in church somewhere. You're going to kneel, you're going to cry, you're going to scream, whether you're driving the car in the forest or at church, doesn't really matter. You ask for help. Help doesn't come. You live in darkness and depression and loneliness for a while. And because of Charles Darwin, something about your organism says, stop being an idiot. Now, you don't really hear this, it just happens. And then little by little, you kind of remake your life and reinvent yourself. And life goes on. If you're talking about someone who has cancer, for example, there is no overcoming it except coming to a place of acceptance. I have cancer, I'm going to die, I had a crappy life, I made all the wrong decisions, I was bad to my wife, I was bad to my kids. I'll try to make it up the last few days. Yeah. Okay. If there are no other questions, Joseph?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I have one for a while. But, when you think of, like, things that are distractions,
I'm sorry?
when you think of things that are, like, distractions, do you think of it like neutral association or, like, a positive or?
Oh, you've read books. I don't like people who read books.
It's a recurring theme.
Sure.
We keep talking about, like, distractions.
It depends what your aim is, and it depends how passionate you are about the aim. If, for example, you want to play the piano, you want to learn how to play the piano, well, you're a beginner. And there is something also about the human organism that doesn't like discipline. We are free-spirited. We don't like laws. We don't like to be told what to do. You want to just have a good time, especially if you're not very passionate, again, about playing the piano. So your parents have to slap you, kick you, punch you. They have to make you feel guilty about the money they're spending on you, learning to play the piano. Your teacher comes you, embarrasses you, maybe spits on you, whatever the case may be. Okay? Now, we have no choice but to be distracted. That's the way we function. If, on the other hand, you have an aim, imagine for a moment that you like me. Do you?
I'm imagining it.
I didn't like the way that sounded, but I'll forgive you. Now imagine for a moment that you like me. And let's say as you're sitting, you say, okay, maybe I should come back to class tomorrow night. You have made an aim for yourself. But you see, our relationship really is not that strong. Maybe some of the things I've said offends you. Maybe you didn't like my boxing comment. Who the hell knows? Maybe you don't like the way I speak. Maybe you don't like the fact that I'm better looking than you are. Right? Now, you decide, at least for now, that you want to come back to class tomorrow. But because our relationship is not very strong, what's going to happen is William is going to call you tomorrow morning. You want to have pizza? Yeah. When? How about we meet at 5:30? Where? France. I don't know, Zachary's. Well, you know you were planning to come to class. And the point is, whenever your relationship is not as strong, distraction comes about very, very, very easily. If you have ever suffered grief, and grief has different stages, but imagine I am your dad, if you can imagine it. And let's say, imagine also that you and I have a great relationship. I've changed your diapers for the past 25 years. Physical diapers, emotional diapers, intellectual diapers, okay? You go home and expecting to have dinner with me. And you find me on the kitchen floor. I'm dead. Well, with that intense of a loss, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to be distracted. I make up about 80% of who and what you are. In the moment of grief, when it's consumed you, I am 100% in your psyche. You can't get rid of me. You have lost something tremendously important. You will not pick up any calls. You will not watch porn. You will not drink. You may scream. You may cry. Now that is what grief does for you. It creates for you an aim. You have suffered a loss. Find a way to cope with it. If on the other hand, I am your father, and you and I have had a lousy relationship, and I have been in the wrong most of it, say 99% of the time, I have wronged you. And you come home, just say hello, you find me on the kitchen table, you say, thank God he's dead. You will grieve for maybe a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of tears, but that's it. You need to understand how difficult it is to create students. If you have gotten your master's degree, your parents have been a great support system, always pushing you, never allowing you to be distracted. Don't take a year off. For what? We are immigrants. What are you going to do with a year off? What, have parties with who? Don't be stupid. And parents, immigrant parents are very, very different. Your life does not belong to you. So they make sure that your aim, you're focused on that. And so because of that, there is this love that they have for you. And in that love, there are these images. We're immigrants. We don't want our kid to become a bum. We'll do whatever we can to make sure he goes to school. Your mom sacrifices, your dad sacrifices, what little money they have, they'll give it to you. You go to school, as you have 25, you have a master's degree. But now, the other goal that you have is you want to find yourself a companion. But you don't know which notes to hit. You don't know what keys to hit. It's all over the place. Your aim is the relationship. But what kind of relationship? So, for you to come to this class tomorrow, the only way you'll show up is if something about this class has touched you deeply, and you won't be able to forget. Your organism may want to force you to forget, but something about your psyche says no. Then you will show up to class. And if you do this over and over and over again, you may have a master's in math, but you will do a PhD in philosophy. Or if not that, you'll come to my house and help me with the backyard. Anyone else? Oh, yeah.
Goes somewhat to Jacob's question. But,
Jacob. Who's Jacob? Joseph.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. He doesn't mind.
Joseph's question. Are there things that are worth celebrating?
Yeah, you should celebrate every accomplishment. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean much, but it's good that you celebrate. I mean, especially these days. Your kid graduates from, like, first grade, huge party. Second grade, huge party. They throw a ball through a basketball hoop. Oh my God, you invite the entire town. So from the very beginning, you teach your child to love themselves because they are so great. Yeah?
Reiterate.
Yeah.
Why do we forget to celebrate?
Why did we forget? We don't forget. We celebrate it all the time. I won't answer your question, but I'll tell you a story. Many, many years ago, there was this Buddhist monk who has been celibate his entire life because that's what the Buddha demanded, that you need to be celibate. And so he finds a very, very old writings of the Buddha. And he comes to realize that a scribe, someone who was copying the Buddha's works, the original manuscript written by the very Buddha himself, he said, you should celebrate. But someone forgot to put the R in there. and just put celibate. I know it's a bad joke, but nevertheless. Anyone else? You know, there are these small stepping stones that you and I cross or jump over. Oh, they're fun. They're good. There's also the bigger picture that it doesn't matter what you do, you're always going to be a scumbag. And so the intensity of how you celebrate kind of diminishes a little bit. Aldous Huxley, I think, put it best, that whether you are a saint, a prophet, or just an ordinary human being, eventually you're going to fall victim to sickness and vomit. Plotinus was a guy who came about almost 300 years, I think, if I'm not mistaken, after Plato. He was the founder of New Platonism. He was like the new Plato, so to speak. He had all these, a few mystical experiences, visions of God and self and all that. Eventually, he died in his own poop. So, you should celebrate that. Anyone else? That's it? Huh. You guys don't ask any questions. Okay. Let's move into Judaism. We have about an hour and a half. We'll stay here till about 9:30 tonight. Just kidding. The Old Testament is about, it has 37 books, if I'm not mistaken, or 38, or maybe 39. No one knows who the authors of those books are. They are written at different times in history. Probably the oldest book of the Old Testament is the book of Job, which has been plagiarized or stolen from some Babylonian narrative that resembles the events that took place in the life of this man we call Job. So, this is how the human story begins in Judaism. Now remember, all these religions that we're talking about, regardless of which one you choose, they all talk about something about the human being having gone wrong. The human being becomes aware of certain flaws, and then of the many human beings, one or two become curious enough and eventually passionate enough, and eventually they fall in love with the journey, and they go figure out what has gone wrong and how they can bring beauty back to their life.